Okay, Matt.
Okay, it's 7:50, 7:51.
6:51. 6:51, that's all right.
That's the ending time. No. Yeah. Thank you for the correction. So we're going to reconvene and continue on with the city council meeting. Consent calendar. All items listed under the consent calendar category are considered routine. The complete consent calendar will be enacted by one motion roll call vote. For the purpose of discussion, any council member may have an item removed from the consent calendar and made part of the regular agenda. The council then can approve the remainder of the consent calendar.
Like to remove item B.
You say B?
B.
Okay. Any other items? I would like to remove item E as in Edward. Do I have a motion to approve the remaining items?
I'll make a motion to approve the rest.
Second.
Motion.
Roll call, please. Do I need to clarify each item?
That is
It'd be,
2A, 2C, 2D, and 2F. All but 2B and 2E. And that was a motion by Councilmember Avalos.
No,
yeah,
Councilmember Robertson, second by,
First and second.
First and second.
apologies.
Councilmember Avalos.
Aye.
Councilmember Robertson.
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra.
Aye.
Mayor Franco.
Aye.
Okay, item 2B, this is the consideration of acceptance of funds from the Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program. So there's $18,223, looks like, in this account, and it looks like it can be used for many purposes, including the Worthy Bringing Broken Neighborhoods Back to Life program, but it can also be used for DUI enforcement details. Can we, I think we said at the last meeting, we talked about how we haven't had, I think Councilman Avalos brought it up, we haven't had a DUI checkpoint in a while, and Chief Dick said it's because it's grant-based. Can we put some of this money towards a DUI checkpoint, and how much does a DUI checkpoint cost?
I'll answer the second question first because I'm going to refer it to finance because I wouldn't know that off the top of my head. I can produce what we would normally staff a DUI checkpoint or a DUI saturation patrol with, and then he'll have to provide the actual numbers. But yes, we can use it for this, for a DUI type of operation. So that would not be any problem to do so. And the things that we have listed here are just options that we can choose to use it for. What we often use it for would be when we do special operations, usually about quarterly we've done those. We've used them as well as for community events such as our Raisin Festival and some other things like that, where we have some staffing needs that are not covered in the general fund budget or where we need additional funds, so this helps out.
Okay, because it just, the recent events, there have been lots of vehicles that have caused lots of misery and death and due to impaired drivers, so it seems like it would be really topical and important to have a DUI checkpoint in Selma, and here looks like a potential for funding for that.
Correct. So just kind of off the top of my head, probably around $1,500 to run an operation.
1,500?
1,500?
1,500?
So are you basing that,
I'm just talking about salary overtimes and things of that nature.
okay, so when you base, did I miss something? Chief, did you clarify by saying how many officers would staff a DUI?
No, I did not, but I think that's probably something he has seen from our previous, and I wouldn't know, I don't know off the top of my head how many we've used. About 8 to 10, is that?
Sounds about right.
About right there, so that's,
I can go back into the records and pull some more accurate information if you'd like me to report that out later.
Do we need to make this an agenda item, or should we just say we're going to allocate some of this towards a DUI checkpoint?
we can
or several this
allocate
year?
it, anything that is mentioned here or related like that, as long as we can show that the money was spent there and have record keeping of it with finance.
And how many DUI checkpoints would you recommend, Chief?
I'd like to start one probably before the end of the year. As we approach the end of the year is a good time to have them, because then you're seen out there by the public, and we're hopefully sending a message before a lot of the Christmas parties and New Year's parties start up that we will be out in force enforcing the DUI laws.
I was watching, I read this, and I just considered the evaluations from what you guys were basing it on, and I was going to take it, but since Mr. Councilmember Robertson brought it up, and our finance director just shot a number out, being a finance person, my whole thought process on this, and you pulled it and you want to put it on the agenda, my whole process is the question becomes, you start throwing numbers out, what has been the norm you using that money? What is our policy in regards, or have we had anything structured based on that money that's being presented to us, given to us? And what I mean is, because of the infrastructure, because of the things that have been going on in our community, I just question the fact of the $1,500, the DUI number thrown out, because I want our staff to start looking at all the funds that we have as a part of our resource money that we have, and start laying out a structured plan for our future city, so we can know that when this money's brought to us, we're combating an issue long-term, not just Band-Aid approach. So if you'd like to put on the agenda, we'd great.
This is our last meeting of the year, Councilman, so I'm just thinking, since the chief indicated that this is a high-exposure time for holiday parties, I would think we need to have an emergency DUI checkpoint, and then, of course, bring it back later as a policy, as an agenda item, so we can look at where these grant funds should be expended.
That's fine. I'm not against the DUI. What I'm going to state to you is that when you guys throw numbers out, I'm looking at what are we basing the facts on? What's been the past routine for our city, and what is our structured plan for the future 5-10 years, like the mayor stated, because I want to start implementing projects and implementing plans for the betterment of our city. So if you'd like, I'm not against the DUI.
Some of these funds, such as Burns Grant, OTS, can fluctuate from year to year, and so it is difficult in budget times and in other times to know exactly what you're going to end up with.
Point. That's the reason why.
So
That's the
this
reason why
amount
I'm
of money
bringing
is not a set amount necessarily every year.
It's very low.
And what you ask for and what is out there based upon how many entities across the nation ask for this, sometimes is how your funding is set. And like I said, it can fluctuate from year to year.
So do we have consensus?
Yeah, can we make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve
Do we
it.
have to?
Do we have to?
Do we have to make a motion?
No, it's on the.
To have for them to have a DUI and then to bring it back? I don't think we
Well,
need a motion to
we
bring it
don't-
back on
we
this.
just
You
have
don't
to
need a
approve the
motion
funds
to bring it
and-
back, but you can make a
Yeah.
motion to allocate the $1,500 for an emergency
I would make a motion to
DUI.
allocate
I'll second that.
$1,500 for an emergency DUI before the end of the year.
And then we do need to authorize for the mayor to sign the documents.
Right.
I mean,
We have to make a motion to accept the funds and then allocate
Well-
1,500 for,
I don't know.
because this is we have to
I don't
accept
know
it.
if that's enough. Just for clarity, I mean, we could allocate the funds to a DUI checkpoint, but I wouldn't lock myself into that $1,500 without me doing research.
Okay.
That was just an estimate that I kind of.
So, Isaac, you need a motion to accept the funds and with DUI checkpoint to be primary source of that.
What's your error? What's your margin for error?
I'd have to go back and do the
$1,500.
research. I mean, I can actually go back and pull the reports and see what we submitted in the past and give you
Okay.
a more solid number.
Does he have a strike point that he can't go over, he can't exceed, or
Well, you know
is he
what,
authorized
Mr.
to
Mayor?
expend
Let's
funds?
come back. Well, you know what? We haven't had a checkpoint for a while, Scott.
Well, he hasn't had it all year.
Yeah, because,
Yeah,
I want
that's why we
people
don't
to go
know.
home safe and
Especially around this
enjoy
time of year.
Christmas and the holiday spirit without loved one dying or some getting hurt.
City manager, you'd like to say something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, really, what we need is the authorization to go ahead and execute the document so we can receive the grant. And since it is an allowable use, and you've given us clear direction that you'd like to see us use it in this way, we can go ahead and implement that.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Okay, second.
We have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Robertson.
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra.
Aye.
Mayor Franco.
Aye. Okay, item E, consideration rejection of a claim, Susan Urias claimant. I'd like to have this tabled or pulled to the next city council meeting and discussed in closed session. Because we can't, there's some issues that the council needs to discuss about, but because of legal issues, we can't do it out in the open.
That is correct.
Is there imminent lawsuit? Is there a threat of a lawsuit?
That is a threat of a lawsuit. It's a claim.
Well, it's right here, though,
Do you
in public session.
Do you need a motion?
Well,
Yes,
we want to discuss the details relating to the claim, and that needs to be done in a closed session.
I'll make a
So
motion.
if,
I'll make a motion.
if there's a consensus to pull this off the agenda, have it on the closed session for your next meeting in January, we can do that.
Are there
you know what?
details about the claim that you
Right, that
know
we
about?
need to, that
Scott-
we as a council
Scott,
need to
I'll-
discuss.
I'll make a
but-
motion to table it to our
I'll
next.
second it.
Behind closed session till we address this issue.
Yep.
Behind closed doors. Legal action here.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
Councilmember Avalos?
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Robertson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra?
Aye.
Mayor Franco?
Aye. Okay, with that, we go to item 3, public hearing. Consideration and necessary action on a resolution placing measure on the March 3rd, 2020 ballot, allowing licensed gambling establishment in the city of Selma, a public hearing, a second reading, and adoption of an ordinance to be approved by the voters, allowing a licensed gambling establishment in the city of Selma, all in accordance with provision of the Business and Professional Code 19960C.
Mayor, members of the council, you have two items here, both of which are the subject of this public hearing. The first is a resolution which simply places a measure on the March 3rd, 2020 ballot. And the question posed to the voters is whether or not they will allow a card room in the city of Selma. By voting yes on that measure, the voters are effectively adopting the ordinance that we provided to you. Your city manager, assistant city manager, and I have significantly altered the ordinance from the version that you saw at your last meeting. And basically, the changes we have made are changes that incorporate what we found attractive in ordinances of either the city of Fresno or the city of Clovis, both of which have a card room. We incorporated the provisions in there that we thought were appropriate into our ordinance. So there are significant changes to the ordinance that you're looking at now from the ordinance that you saw at your last meeting. The card room, according to the ordinance, is allowed only in the regional commercial zone. There are only 2 properties in your regional commercial zone, and those would be the properties that are owned by Dwight Nelson or a company controlled by him, the auto mall, the restaurant, the hotel, and the other property that is in the commercial regional zone is Selma Crossings. And of course, we came across the fact that it is possible for anybody in that zone to apply for a card room license in the event the voters approve this measure. So we've included in your ordinance, it's at page 77, item E, a provision that deals with the possibility of there being competing applications. And so I've passed around what is an amended promissory note for Mr. Nelson to sign. You'll notice that we have added a paragraph, which is paragraph 4, which basically says that in the event somebody else competes for this license application, that as a condition of granting the license to that person as opposed to Mr. Nelson or a company he controls, that we will require that person to reimburse Mr. Nelson what he has paid to the city to have this appear on the ballot and the preparatory work for that. This is just in case sort of thing. It's not likely that that's going to happen. The person who controls Selma Crossings is Mr. Kinsey's law partner, and he would be forbidden by law from competing against a client of his firm. But, you know, if in the event he sold the property, that person could conceivably apply. We don't expect that, but Dwight was requesting a provision of that nature that, to my mind, seems only fair. And he has already executed the other one. He's prepared to execute this one as well. That is one change to the ordinance that we made of many. And we basically did this the Friday before last, and by the time I got it to Nelson's attorney, I believe it was last Tuesday, and he did not have much time to review that. And on Saturday, he contacted me and requested that some changes be made. And so I spoke with him and talked over the changes that he was proposing. And what I'm distributing to you now are a red line version of 3 sections of the ordinance, which were the places that he requested changes be made to. The first one you see is to section 525.7, and the request made of me was that the license fee should be based on net revenues as opposed to gross revenues. I am not willing to recommend that to you because any decent bookkeeper can take any kind of expenses and simply reduce those revenues to 0 so that you're cut with the 0 by adding in depreciation and other expenses. There are circumstances in which you might want to encourage a particular expenditure. For example, you heard from Mr. Nelson about how the auto mall is around 200 in the nation in our little city of Selma. And that, I think, he attributes to significant advertising efforts. So there are circumstances in which you might want to move away from applying the license fee percentage against gross revenues and allow for deductions of particular expenses. So I simply altered subdivision B of that section so that it basically says that the license fee shall be a percentage determined by city council resolution based on revenues of the licensee determined from a monthly statement of revenue and expenses submitted to the city. That leaves you open to either base your percentage on either the gross revenues or net revenues or anywhere in between. Totally up to you. Excuse me. That change resulted in a change to Section 52531, which is the second, or actually the third page of that document that I've handed over to you. And all Mr. Nelson's attorney was requesting was the inclusion of a reference to a statement of revenue and expense. And as we were going through this, I noticed that the provision we had inserted, which is from a different city's ordinance, provided for the payment of the license fee with the giving of the monthly statement of revenue every month, whereas Section 7 basically says that the council's resolution determines when the amount is payable, under what terms the amount is payable, and what the amount is. So I deleted the provision there that referred to the payment being made every month. I think from a finance point of view, it's easier and more efficient to do it on a quarterly or even longer basis rather than have it due every single month. But I simply deleted that provision to make it consistent with Section 7. The other change that was requested was, you'll recall, in our first reading of the ordinance, Section 20, 52520, provided for 110 tables. And Mr. Nelson explained that his prediction was perhaps at most 25. So I arbitrarily changed that to 30, just to account for some possible expansion. Dwight's attorney requested that we increase that a little bit to 40 to allow for a further expansion, because under the law, you're only allowed to increase the number of tables by a percentage of the amount that was originally approved by the voters, and it would be 25%, so you could increase it only to, I think, 38. So we just inserted 40. He was requesting 50, and we just split the baby and picked 40. Any number you pick is going to be arbitrary. And it's not likely that he could fit 40 tables in the place that he's proposing to conduct this business anyway. Those are the changes that he requested. As I mentioned, your city manager and I went through the entire ordinance and made numerous other changes. But I will point you to Section 52533, which provides, and that's at page 93 of your packet. That section provides that with a few exceptions, the number of tables, the types of games, the amounts of wagers, that if this measure is approved by the voters, the city council may amend or change any provision in this ordinance by a majority vote. So what the ordinance actually ends up looking like is kind of inconsequential and academic at this point. He has lots of hoops to go through. Number one is the approval of the voters, of course. Then he has to go to the state and get the license, and then he has to finally come back here and get the license.
On that note, I just want to ask a clarifying question. When they approve this ordinance, the council could, if the state allows, then increase the number of licenses to what the state allows by a vote of the council?
They could.
And the
If-
state
if
allows
the-
two?
If the state allowed it, but right now, as the statute's written, you can only allow one.
Okay, that's the current statute. Okay, and then in this, the research that we did, the city of Fresno and the city of Clovis both base their license fees on gross receipts. So, and some of the other cities that we saw in the research we did with the city of Clovis, none of them are on net receipts. They had a component of gross receipts or some other fees. So I strongly recommend that you consider the gross receipts as a licensing fee gauge.
And, either way, if you stick with the way it's written, it expressly provides for gross receipts. If you go with the amendment, you just do that in your resolution, you provide for a percentage of gross
Well,
receipts.
Okay. Council have any comments before I open up the public hearing?
So that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Is this a
Discussion?
discussion or
Or
is
is
it
this
a?
public hearing?
This is a
Public-
public hearing.
Okay,
Public
so
hearing.
prior to the public hearing, Neil stated he received the information on Tuesday. When did you receive the information to the city manager? Was it Tuesday also, or
We received the changes from Mr. Nelson today,
today?
and Neil received them on Saturday.
I think I indicated I had sent the revisions that the city manager and I had made to the ordinance to Dwight Nelson's attorney on or about Tuesday. It may have been Monday.
Okay, so the attorney for Nelson sent it to you on Tuesday, and you said you reviewed it and sent it to the city
No, they sent
on
it
today?
Tuesday.
Or they
sent
sent, or the city, or the Nelson's attorney sent it to you on Tuesday?
No,
today.
Nelson,
Sent it on
Nelson's attorney called me on Saturday.
Saturday.
I made the revisions this morning when my secretary came to the office. And that's when the city manager received them as well.
Okay. And after we have the public hearing, we can still just ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're good.
I'm gonna wait. Let the public make a comment. I do have a little concern, but I'll wait till the public comment.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open up to the public. Does anybody wish to come up and speak on this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nindy Sandu, 2416 Rodeo Street. I'm just curious, some years back, there was a casino open up on Manning and Old 99. And we have plenty of casinos around. Table Mountain, there's up in the mountains, there's Hitachi, there's some gambling places. And my question to the city council is this something that the Selma needs? I mean, what's the purpose behind it? Is that a purely business profit purpose, or is it something that's going to make our community better? So I just leave you with that question.
Okay.
Yes, Dwight Nelson, and I am the proponent, I guess, person asking for this to be done. As far as the information provided by the city attorney, we're very agreeable to work with the city in any way possible. We have to pattern it after Clovis or Fresno. We don't have a problem with that. We're just interested in having this go forward. And in answer to the questions asked here, the purpose is this. Card rooms such as this exists in Fresno and Clovis. They're private card rooms. Clovis has the 500 Club. Fresno has Club 1. Then there are Indian casinos, which are Tachi in Lemoore, Table Mountain in northwest or northeast Fresno, Chichancy. When you go down south to Porterville, there's another one, I can't remember the name. There's also private card rooms in Delano, one in Visalia. And what these do, as far as the private rooms do, is they provide a source of entertainment. And this entertainment has proven consistently to be safe, to be in the public interest, because it allows people to go in there and have time together playing games that they like to play. And I have not found anywhere in our part of the state of California where these have caused any problems that I'm aware of. So the idea that these are a good form of entertainment, I think, is well established. What this will do for Selma is that it will provide a source of income that the City of Selma currently does not have. And that income can be as high as $1 million a year. Obviously, to start off, it's not going to be there, but in time it could get there. And that income is revenue that the city would have to, number one, in my opinion, fight crime. Because Selma has, as we all know, as of late, somewhat of a problem with crime. It also can be used in your general fund to do whatever you wish to do with it. It's not, the card rooms are not something that we have found create any type of bad people or anything like that going on. It's not that at all. You have the Fresno Fair that has horse racing that brings thousands of people every year. Club 1 in Fresno does a tremendous job at serving the public, and so does the 500 Club. So we think it's good for Selma. We think it'll be an entertainment that Selma doesn't have, and will keep people in Selma that currently might be taking their money elsewhere to be able to enjoy themselves. And I'm willing to answer any questions. Thank you.
I got a question, sir, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask?
Yes.
What's the deal with the net revenue? Why are you pushing for that?
Here, where the confusion comes is, and it's because of trying to understand, and we have not, on our side, we have not seen Fresno's card room ordinance, and we've not seen Clovis's. City Manager Teresa Galvin has said she has seen it, I believe, and she told me today, I called her today and we had a conversation, and she said what she found was that both Fresno and Clovis have it on gross revenue. And I said, well, if that's the way it is, then that's fine with us. I just didn't know.
Oh, okay.
And neither did Mr. Kinsley, my attorney. He wasn't sure about it. And I said, well, if that's the way it is in Fresno and Clovis, then that's the way it should be here also.
Okay. This is just if you had your druthers, you would like
I
the
just wasn't
lower
sure.
number. It's a
Yeah,
business
I just
move on your
wasn't
part.
sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Got it.
Would anybody else? With that, we're bringing it back to council.
So
Go ahead, Johnny.
I have a question. It actually does not pertain to the actual question in regards to the public hearing. It has to do with some housekeeping in regards to, if we receive this information, it would probably be best to have the city manager receive the information at the same time, even though you've received it, to give it to her. So when we ask any questions for her, it could actually be beneficial that both of you guys receive the information at the same time. That's the only thing I have.
Jim?
Okay. Well, okay. He just answered the question, you know, and Teresa said they looked at the Fresno gambling on the Club 1 and also Clovis, and it's done by gross, so they already set the template, and I think we should go along with the template, you know, because he's got a long road ahead of us. You know, he has to go to the voters and approve this, and then from there he has to go to the state, try to acquire a license. You know, he's got a lot of hurdles he has to
This is
to
just step
jump.
one.
Then come back
You
to
know,
us.
So,
Well, and given that fact, that would make the revisions on page 1 and 3 of the document that's before you moot.
It'd be removed.
Those would be moot, except that the one sentence that was stricken from section 31, which provides for the payment of the license fee to be made with a monthly statement of income. I think that should be remain stricken because it conflicts with provision 7, which sets the terms of the payment and the amount of the payment by resolution. And you just don't want those inconsistencies. So I would suggest to you that we alter the ordinance just by striking that one sentence that I have stricken in there.
But isn't it true that, I mean, we're going to approve this, or we're going to put it on a public hearing, and we're going to follow the process, but correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it true that after he does all the hurdles and all the information, he still got to come back and get the license?
Yeah, yeah.
So we still can enforce our arbitrary, our
Conditions.
information or issues that we have. We can still bring them to him and we can discuss that. So right now, it's actually a moot point. It's in a,
Well, and you can change any provision of the ordinance at any time, even after the voters approve it, as long as it's not one of those items we mentioned. So yes, that's fine.
but, you know, the other fact too, you brought it up, Johnny, good point. But the other fact too, if we set these parameters, when he goes to the state, they'll look at these parameters and say, hey, you know what, he's going by the regular card room guy, so he's in compliance. So he more likely has a good chance of getting a license. You know, that's what I look at things too as well.
Can he buy an existing license, existing card room license, and apply it to Selma? Or would there be an issuance of a new license by the state
There has to be.
geographically?
There has to be an approval of the voters for a card room to exist in any city. So we have made the license that you would be issuing in the event this is passed by the voters non-transferable. And we took that provision in part from the ordinances that exist both in Fresno and Clovis, which make their licenses non-transferable. So I think the answer is no. A license could not be transferred unless there's some city out there that, has the voters pass a measure of this type and accepts a transferred license in from Porterville or whatever.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Are there any licenses like that you might be able to buy if the voters passed it, that you're aware of?
No, not that I'm aware of.
To your knowledge, it would be generated by the state?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. I got a couple questions. So, I think that it's a good thing that there's a local hire provision in this agreement, that Mr. Nelson strives to hire local people. So this will be, Mr. Sand, you asked about the benefits. This would be a benefit to hire local people, be good for the local economy. I do have an issue or a question. In terms of the city, is it just a simple majority, or would it have to be 2/3 that would vote in the card room?
The voters,
The voters.
simple majority,
So just 50.
50% plus one.
50.1, okay. And then who would the card room administrator be? Because it looks like that person's going
Card
to have
room
a lot of juice in this
Yes.
matter.
The card room administrator.
And that's
under
page
this-
92. if anyone
Under
wants to
this
check it out.
ordinance is appointed by the city manager.
Would it be the same? Would you be the card room administrator probably for practical purposes? Okay. And finally, the billing. We're just talking about the billing and making sure it's consistent with the ordinances and the statutes. Is it better to bill monthly or to let it go quarterly? From what I heard about Clovis, they didn't bill or something for a while, and they got behind, and they had to change owners pretty fast because they didn't have the money to pay the billing. Is it wiser to bill monthly so the city knows that it's, going to collect that money and is aware of any problems ahead of time?
I think monthly would be a better option.
And
yes.
is there any default provision in this? If is there a late penalty? Is there any provision
I
for
believe
not
we did
paying
write
or
that
late
in
pay?
there. If I'm correct.
I
Is there?
actu-
I thought we did.
Okay.
So I did a little bit of research in regards, because I do work with a couple of developers, because I do. And one of the interesting things that they did at Club One, and actually the Fine Art Club, was they came together and they actually formed a auditing structure, and they both hired the auditor together, and the auditor actually gives them a fair billing of what the cost and what the revenue is. So that's what they're basing their fees. So it's not about, one individual goes and does an audit. They both jointly have it in there. And that's
What
how
kind of
that's
revi-
what created.
Is
that's
this
what they're
a
creating.
compiled, a reviewed,
would be
or
something they
what
would-
kind of audit would it be? What kind of audit?
You
there's
just go in
three
and do
kinds, right?
it's just a financial audit. You go in and verify records. You do sampling and testing and things of that nature to make sure that the information we're receiving
These would be
is accurate.
audited financials, though.
Well, they have to submit audited financials each year to us. They are
That's what
open to
Councilman
go out
Trujillo
to
was talking
audit
about.
from city staff. In addition to that, there's also a clause in here where we can hire an auditing firm to go do the audit for us if we see cause.
That's the reason why they have the city has the administrator there.
Mhm.
Okay.
He signs off on the audit.
And just to clarify on that, some of the language, that we would keep in there on section 52531, section C, we did add and would be keeping that the reasonable expense of a contractor retained by the cardroom administrator would be in accordance with the procedures developed by the city council and set by a resolution. So if there would be a trigger if there was needed to be an outside audit. And I would just like to clarify, so I make sure I understand what we are keeping in 525-31 under audit section A. If I could just read that as I understand what you're explaining, Mr. City Attorney, thank you. So the monthly statement of revenue, striking and expense. The licensee shall file with the finance director before the 15th day of each month for the prior month a statement under oath showing the true and correct amount of the gross revenue derived from the card game business permitted by the license issued to or held by such licensee for the preceding months. Will keep in there such statements shall be accompanied by the payment of the correct amount of the license fee due and owing in accordance with the provisions of this chapter. The city's acceptance of these payments shall be subject to the city's right to audit the matters reported in the monthly statements of revenue to determine the accuracy of the monthly statements of revenues and whether or not the correct amount payable to the city has been paid pursuant to audit provisions of this chapter. Is that how you're proposing we
That is how I'm proposing you do it, yes.
Thank you.
And there's an option for the police chief also to weigh in on this at the end of the year based on any incidents and if there are any social problems or impacts created by the card room. Is that correct? In the
Yeah,
agreement? Look like
absolutely.
the PD has an option to do that as well.
Chief of Police has a number of functions dictated by the ordinance relative to verifying the suitability of employees and many, many other things.
All of the employees, all of the owners
All of the
are
employees.
fingerprinted and are DOJ'd. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
they all have to have work permits, and that means they go get the live scan fingerprints, and they don't have criminal backgrounds, and we verify that for them, for which they pay a fee.
And it says here on page 93, the city council has no authority to decrease the number of tables under that section without the vote of the electorate. Well, what if the business owner is not making money on, he goes to 40 tables and he's not making money, wants to go back to 30? What happens then? Can he just go back to 30?
Yes, you can. That is a provision that regulates the city council, and it's basically just telling the city council what is and is not off limits for the council. So the council can't vote to amend the ordinance to decrease the number of tables. It could amend the ordinance to increase the number of tables, but it's qualified by a statute that only allows you to increase them to a level that is 25% above the level originally set by the voters.
And one card room equals what, how much square footage? Is there a limit?
No, there's no limit on the
Just
square
one,
footage of the.
but one card room is the only card room that you can have, and that means there are no barriers in the middle of the card room. I just didn't see card room defined in the contract. Usually I see these terms defined, and that's
Oh, you mean
an
isolated-
important term.
you mean
You can only have one
isolated?
card room, so what does that mean?
Right.
One uninterrupted space?
It's undefined.
It's undefined.
It's undefined.
Has it been tested in a court of law?
It has not that I know of, and I do know that if you go to the 500 Club, not the one on Clovis Avenue, but the one on Willow, there are dividing walls between some of the tables. And I think it's because they play different types of games.
Oh. Okay,
I
for
don't know
noise and
why.
that kind of thing.
But the card room itself is simply a business establishment that is authorized to have a number of tables.
You could have a
And
separate office, for
You
instance.
could have, in
Same.
his case, you could have, for example,
Restaurant.
one banquet room in that existing restaurant devoted to the card room, and the banquet room next to it, which are separated by, I believe they are, separated by a wall. That could also be a card room. I don't think there's anything in the ordinance or the law that would prohibit that.
So it sounds like one card room equals one building, potentially.
It is always one building, yes. But
Here it says, we define it as, card room means a business or enterprise licensed under the provisions of this chapter for the playing of games.
Okay. So it's pretty vague, it doesn't really specify the dimensions.
It's completely vague, and
Interpret
it's
it.
defined as what you license. So ultimately, this city council has the ability to determine what the card room is going to look like. There's a provision in this ordinance that requires him, as part of the application, to submit a site plan and a schematic, thank you, of what the card room is going to look like. And if you guys decide you don't want, 6 card tables over here in one room and 6 card tables over in another room, you don't allow it. You make them knock down the wall. If what you want them to do is have it all in one open space.
And that's what Club
you
One
can do
looks
that.
like in Fresno. It's one open space, with the bar.
Yeah,
Just
that's what,
wondering
that's what Club One is, and
how much
basically,
they put in there.
the other one in Clovis is that way too. So as you walk in, there's different tables, different parameters laid out.
Last question. Any other kind of businesses that can go in there? Anything else that you can put in there in a card room? Or is that prohibited? Does it have to be just cards and a bar and some tables and chairs? Or could you put in some other means of entertainment?
You could provide food, drinks, which they do at all of these card rooms.
I think it also mentioned ancillary services such as, didn't we have the barber shop in there?
Could have a barber shop.
You could have ancillary services, but then again, as part of the application, he's required to come in here and show you what the operation is going to look like, what it's going to be, what he's going to do precisely.
Would it be subject to the city's conditions and the gaming fee even for the ancillary services? Would the city get a cut of that as well? No? Okay, just the cards.
No,
It's property taxes and
it
all that.
speaks to the ancillary services in the ordinance, and the ancillary services revenues are excluded from the revenues of the card room per se.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm still struggling with the license fee gauge. Are we rewording this to say it's going to be based off the growth revenue, not the net revenue?
It would
Yes.
be in the form in which it appears in your current version that is in the packet, which says,
65.
the license fee shall be a percentage of gross revenues of the licensee based upon the monthly statement of revenue submitted to the city by licensee.
Okay, and then my other question, this is to the city manager, Teresa. Do you feel you were given ample time, enough time to do a thorough review and get comparisons to make sure that what we're seeing here is very thorough? I mean, because I just struggle with getting information the day of council, which I understand, the holidays, but not being able to sit there and review and take a look at all this. I mean, I have to trust you, Neil, but I'd like to make sure that you did a thorough job in getting us this information.
Thank you, Councilmember Gary. Yes, the Assistant City Manager and I both reviewed. I reviewed the City of Fresno's and he reviewed the City of Clovis, and then we sat down with the city attorney and compared both of those very carefully with the initial draft and made quite a few changes, as the city attorney mentioned. So we did take considerable time. We spent several hours in here before the holiday reviewing those documents. And today we had time to discuss these changes that were requested from the applicant and give you feedback here today. So thank you. We were able to review those two documents as comparisons.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay, so if we're on agreement, I think we're looking for a motion to waive the second reading and to pass a resolution based off the gross.
And also
full.
to approve the resolution placing the measure on the ballot.
On the ballot and with the limit of 40 tables, not to exceed 40 tables.
With the limit of 40 tables and the audit provision as the city manager read it into the record.
Yes, there was one last sentence in that paragraph that I didn't read, but it was unchanged.
Okay.
I make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
And are we also approving the change in the promissory note as
Yes.
well? Does that need to be approved by council?
What? Oh, no, that does not need to be approved by council. It is what it is.
Thank you for clarification. Councilmember Trujillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos?
Aye.
Councilmember Robertson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra?
Aye.
Mayor Franco?
Aye. Okay. Item 4, public hearing, second reading and adoption of an ordinance to be adding section 14 to chapter 3 of Title 9 of Selma Municipal Code, establishing a revolving loan fund to finance abatement and certain public nuisances, and consideration of a resolution establishing user fees. Mr. Moreno?
Thank you. Mayor, council members, the item you have in front of you, this is the second reading. We brought this to you last meeting. It's basically the concept of a revolving loan program for the citizens to be able to abate nuisances that are out there. So the current structure and format will be that a property owner can apply for a loan for a max of $2,500 for property cleanup, or for a demolition of a structure for up to $5,000. There will be an application process and fee. As you can see from your packet, you do have an execution for a new fee schedule, for revolving loan application fee and the administration fee. Is there any questions regarding this matter?
Any questions, council? Okay, with that, I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there any member of the public who wish to comment on this matter? Okay, seeing none, I'm bringing it back to council.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call,
Thank
please.
you.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos?
Aye.
Councilmember Robertson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra?
Aye.
Mayor Franco?
Aye. And before moving on to item 5, we're going to take a quick 3-minute break.